long summer holiday car rides, 2 weeks of Christmas break, the 7 p.m. soundtrack in Animal Crossing New Leaf. It's hard to separate games from my own lived experience. Replaying some of my childhood favorites today, I am pulled back to the exact sounds, smells, and circumstances of the nights I played them. I often ended a long day of playing The Sims by sitting at the dinner table, giving my family an update on the existence of my virtual self. Sometimes I'd gotten married or I'd had a kid that was already heading off for college. Other times I had just gone to school or made a new friend or painted a picture. I participated in every cliche as well. I've locked up, burned down, and made drown my fair share of digital people in my time. Of course, life did go on outside the simulation, and I found myself living through a few of those experiences for real. Not the burning, drowning, or marrying, mind you, but I fell in love. Made friends, did the human thing. I began to apply myself creatively, writing fan fiction and drawing fan art of the characters from Telltale's The Walking Dead, for example, another game I was obsessed with for a few years. After I'd learned my fair share in both the creative field of traditional art and writing, I began to find a way to combine written and visual storytelling through film. Eventually, I found my way to art school. 4 years later, I'm over 30,000 euros in debt and completely unsure of what to do with life. I have to figure it out for myself now. The problem of aimlessness never really happened to me in The Sims. In that game, there's a set track for every career, and even though you almost always start at the bottom of the ladder, it's very hard to fail, even if you ignore cheat codes, which I didn't for the longest time. I used to play the game using both motherload and testing cheats enabled set to true. Now, for those of you who didn't play the game, or were simply more Puritan than I was, these cheats allow you to gain 50,000 simoleons, the in-game currency, and effectively negate the need to commit any effort in order to fulfill your needs, respectively. In real life, these cheat codes could pay my student loans and solve my every problem. In game, however, they simply destroy any sense of difficulty simulated life may have boasted. Cheats ruin the gameplay loop, and yet I always maintain a slightly morbid desire for them, both in and outside of the game. I've given some merit to the idea that using these cheats has irreparably damaged the part of my brain responsible for productivity. Although admittedly the problem undoubtedly stretches far wider than just the cheat codes in one game. It's every game, even the ones without any chances to cheat. As it is with most things these days, mainstream gaming culture is a consequence of capitalism. Games are increasingly designed with something of an addiction in mind. In most every game, failure is discouraged. I'm not talking about roguelikes or souls-likes, which might teach you perseverance through tediousness. I'm talking about the type of game that refuses to give your brain room to feel bad. The type of game that instead opts to tickle the satisfaction centers of your gray matter, wherever dopamine is made, which doesn't stop tickling until you tell it to by turning off the system. And once you do manage to do just that, you'll feel an aching. Like something's missing. Even worse, you'll feel left out once they inevitably bring out the next sequel, or, in the more insidious case of something like The Sims, horribly overpriced expansion packs, usually featuring features that ought to have been fundamentals of the game from the start. After becoming president of the world in just a few sessions playing The Sims, or even after mowing down endlessly respawning hordes of draugrs and dragons in Skyrim without breaking so much as a sweat on your Dorito-dusted mouse finger, is it any wonder that you will end up having trouble dredging up the patience to learn to play the piano? In The Sims, it takes no more than 1 or 2 skill levels to sound halfway decent. In real life, it can take 1 or 2 years to accomplish the same goal. and there are no solidly defined levels to guide you on your way. The real world sometimes just doesn't feel like it can compare to its simulated counterpart. Of course, I can't truly put the entire blame on games for making me or anyone else unsatisfied with life, unmotivated, or simply unproductive. And for those of you who weren't co-parented by a computer and a PlayStation with the occasional visit from Uncle Nintendo, what I'm saying might sound alien or gibberish. Although the problem might sound more familiar if you replace some of the words I've used so far with smartphone, app, or social media hellscape. To put it bluntly, our collective attention spans seem to have taken a holiday to hell with no intent of returning. You might think it's redundant for me to say phones are bad, but just like with the climate, this crisis too won't solve itself if we all just talk about it less, as tired as we all are of hearing of it. If you'll allow me to bask in some self-pity for a paragraph or two, I'd like to say that I often feel like one of the many victims of a world that is evolving its technology much faster than its culture can reasonably keep up with. Just as artists in the early 1900s expressed their concerns and bewilderment with urbanizing populations and increasingly industrializing warfare, so too do I and a lot of people in my generation feel that the age of information will march on with or without us, dragging us along into the future, whether we want it to or not. I don't mean to sound anti-progress or technophobic, and I especially don't mean to say I don't sincerely appreciate the breadth of possibility and ease of life having the entire world at our fingertips that's given us as a species. But every coin has two sides, meaning every outstanding positive is often balanced on the other side by an equal related negative. Sometimes both sides of the coin are the same thing in a different light. For example, artificial intelligence will take over jobs. Artificial intelligence will take over jobs. See, by itself, it's a neutral statement. Some jobs we want to be taken over because they are dangerous or unfulfilling. But what about the people working those jobs? How will they continue to make a living when their living has been taken away? What about people who like their jobs? Does there need to be artificial intelligence that takes over art? The issue is culture, and more importantly, laws, which have to catch up, which means they're always running behind while companies continue to churn out new and exciting frontiers for them to discover and for us to consume. The real issue is who is making the technology and what drives them. The answer, most often, is money. In today's society, is often proven that a profit-driven mindset rarely, if ever, leads to the consumer's best interests being kept in mind. What was that about? Oh, right, yeah, I was talking about video games. Look, nothing I've said so far is meant to negate the good sides that most games do have. In my lifelong unpaid career as a consumer, I've had some of the most immersive and meaningful experiences of my life while playing games like Disco Elysium, Papers, Please, and Fallout New Vegas. To me, the sheer amount of inspiration I get from my own attempts at creation from a piece of media has always been a good measure of the amount of artfulness within it, and games like these have given me plenty. Multiplayer games deserve a shout out too. I mean, I've had more fun nights playing Mario Kart than I have sweating in an overcrowded nightclub. Video games are relatively young as a consumer product, and even younger as a proper form of art. There is no telling what its unique capacity for immersion and long-form storytelling can bring to our culture. And yet, I think people who are like me, who have an exaggerated proficiency for losing themselves in fantastical worlds, should be especially mindful of their own gaming habit in the future, especially as suspected android billionaires begin to sell us increasingly invasive ways of escaping from the real world, without ever having to leave the comfort of our cozy couches. And the real world, for all its flaws, does have a certain I don't know what in French about it. For so long as we have a habitable planet to live on, there are memories to be made on it. At least before we all have to retreat into our nuclear bunkers. To be terminally online has become a bit of a common joke amongst people who are exactly that themselves. But despite their hypocrisy and self-awareness, they are mostly right. There isn't yet a VR attachment that will let you touch the grass of the metaverse's uncanny valleys. So, for now, the real stuff will have to do. And we can all get back to gaming after.